Well, thank you again for joining us this evening for another episode of Ohio Voices Informing Energy Choices, brought to you by the Black Environmental Leaders. We're excited today to talk transit. There's a lot of implications because of the election, and we're here with Mr. Transit, as we call him. So Kim Hardy, who is the founder of Better Bus Coalition, we're going to hear to talk to him today about transit in a regional sense, and what the election results influences may be on transit. So Kim Hardy, could you take a moment and introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you, Celeste, for the invitation to be here. I am Cam Hardy, and as Celeste mentioned, the president and founder of the Better Bus Coalition. Essentially, what that coalition is a group of bus riders who essentially wanted better transit in the city, in the county. And it was a group of us that we led a very strong coalition, a bipartisan coalition of people um, to pass one of the largest levies in the county, and the first transit levy to ever pass outside of the original funding, which was in 80 or 73. So, yep, 73. So, yeah, and now our bus system is expanding. New routes are popping up every day. I don't want to get ahead of you, Celeste, but um, Metro is doing a lot, and not only with the regular routes, but we're getting ready to build bus rapid transit, um, and that's going to be huge, huge for the region. So
So for those of you who don't know, issue 7 passed about 4 years ago, um, at this point. And it was a transit levy that also included infrastructure dollars. It was the
right,
first of its kind, and there were multiple laws that had to be changed to ensure that this happened. We went from funding our countywide bus system from a city's earnings tax to a countywide tax, which included money for infrastructure projects that municipalities can apply for to improve roads that buses go down, or any road within an 8 mile of a bus stop. And so it was a huge win for transit advocates across the country. Is definitely being used as a case study in investing in public transit. And we know
yeah,
the environmental implications for transit is emissions. And so it was important for us to ensure that we can lower emissions by encouraging more people to ride the bus, to making transit more trendy, to making it sexy again, as we like to say, as you know, New York or Chicago, because as we know, the Midwest is growing, even though people say we are on the decline. It is growing, and so especially around tri-state areas, particularly when we look at Cincinnati, Kentucky, and Indiana, is a close proximity. And as we see our partners from Cleveland for Public Transit, and in Columbus. So Cam, I want to talk to you about some of the recent levies that were passed. We see in Columbus there was a transit levy passed, and in Nashville. And as a person who keeps up with everything transit, we'd like to hear your take on, what does that say about transit for our region?
first thing I want to point out about both campaigns in Nashville and Columbus is that they use the same exact colors that we did on issue 7. The colors were identical. The logo was nearly identical. Yeah, a lot of similarities, a lot of similarities. But what it tells me, well, first off, I'm gonna start with Nashville, because as you know, Celeste, this isn't Nashville's first rodeo with this. They went for a levy. I want to say what, maybe 6 years ago, 5 6 years ago, something like that, and it failed 2-1. So this time it passed 2-1. The last time it failed 2-1, and I think part of the reason that it failed, and I actually went to Nashville to study why it failed. But I think it failed simply because the plan was too broad and you could not quickly explain it. And it hurts when your mayor gets caught up in scandal and things like that, and that's your biggest supporter of it. So there was a lot of reasons why it failed, but the advocates kept hope alive. They kept the conversation going. Um, they were able to elect a very pro-transit mayor. I mean, I would say one of the most pro-transit mayors in the country right now. I mean, he rides the bus. He understands public transportation. He understands the importance of it. So they picked up a great champion. And man, Nashville is getting ready to see some expansion. And there is infrastructure attached to their levy as well. So it's going to get them sidewalks. A lot of Nashville don't have sidewalks for people who have not been there. It's a very um, it's a sprawly city that doesn't have much sidewalk infrastructure. And this levy that they just passed is going to bring some of that to them. And so it's really good for Nashville. Now, same thing with Columbus. I think this is their first time trying to expand transit, and they had some really good partners. People that supported the levy, the council president, a lot of the council members. You're trying to get something passed like this, you need a lot of support. Support from everywhere would be great. And so it seems as though in Nashville and Columbus, and they passed both pretty convincingly. It wasn't as close as ours was. But it had a lot of support. It had broad support, and I think people understood the mission. And it is important more than ever to try to scoop up as many partners in this as you can, especially in talking about the transit conversation or whatever you're trying to advocate for, and get a lot of people involved because it's gonna be all hands on deck from here on out, at least for the next 4 years, I would say.
So, as you said, we passed a transit levy in Cincinnati. There has been a transit levy that passed in Toledo. There's now a
Yes.
transit levy that passed in Columbus. So, I want you to talk about what does that say about the cities of Ohio, at least in our major cities, on how they prioritize public transit. Cleveland being the only city that has rail, rail comes up in this conversation, and we have yet to see a levy passed with our friends from Cleveland for public transit. We haven't yet to see them be successful yet in trying to get something on the ballot. So could you just speak to what do you think that says about how Ohioans feel about public transit?
Well, I mean, you mentioned Toledo, and I spent some time in Toledo myself, and you know, they don't run. There was a time in Toledo where there was no Sunday service or holiday service. So I think that when you come from nothing like that, I think that the urgency is always there to improve it. I mean, they really didn't have um, a lot of options in Toledo. I think to answer your question, what it says about citizens in our major cities, especially in Ohio, what it says is that transit is important. And you might not ride it yourself, but someone that you might rely on I ride transit, and so there's aspects of it that are important to everyone. People who might not be able to ride transit, well, the more people that's riding it, the less people that are on the roads. As you mentioned earlier, Celeste, emissions is a big thing. And so, excuse me, the more people we have, taking public transit, as I indicated, the less emissions you have. So, I think that people in the major cities understand that. I also think that building the coalitions have really helped. That is kind of the theme that I see in every single one of the levies that have passed is that strong coalitions have been built, whether it's with AARP, whether it's with the senior, centers, whether it's with the parties, whether it's with the unions. Strong relationships have been built, in every city amongst people in transit. So it's key. That is one of the most important things is you have to build a strong coalition, a strong team. Like you said, Celeste, our levy with issue 7, it was many layers to it. We had to pass, a city levy before we even got to the county levy. It was a lot of layers, and so partnerships was very important, was very strong, and that is something that I see in Columbus, Toledo, and yeah, man, I won't hold out hope for Cleveland. I'm sorry for Cleveland. I think that for they have to continue to fight up there. I mean, they had their coalition rolling before we did, so I kind of got some inspiration from them on that. But they got to continue to fight, and I think that they're close. I think that um, you know when you have examples to turn to, whether it be Cincinnati, Columbus, Toledo, to say like these people got together and pass something for transit. I think that Cleveland's right behind us on it. So a little bit more political will.
Well, there may be a lot of political will in Cleveland, given that they're about to move the Brown Stadium to Brook Park.
I think
Um,
that's really gonna happen.
yes, and so I think that if we just look at transit from that perspective, there are a lot of people who catch public transit to sporting events. It's a big boom for the businesses downtown. As we know, the business community has a lot of influence over transit, whether they see it as a boost for their business or a hurdle for their business. We see the business community complain about bus stops being in front of their businesses because they don't feel like it attracts the type of people that they want outside their establishment. But we have other businesses that see it as a pro because people have more access to their businesses. And so it's all about how do we create those coalitions with everyone to see transit as a benefit. What I feel like it says about Ohioans is that, we want more walkable communities. Even though every community is not, waving the environmental justice flag, I think the environmental implications from improving transit speak for themselves. As you've talked about lowering emissions, having more funding for our agencies so that they're able to, transition to EV modes with our buses. It all plays a role in helping the environment. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the election results. As we know, this past administration, they invested billions of dollars in transit. And so that's not only for buses, but that includes roads, that includes improvement on highways and freeways. And as we know, interstates across the country, particularly in Ohio, have an implication on Black communities. A lot of times we are getting our communities destroyed by some of these expansions of the highways. And so I want you to kind of speak on what the implications for transit. Is this new administration going to be supportive of transit and continue to grow infrastructure, or do we foresee a pullback of resources for public transit?
Question that you asked is a great one. And I think that we're gonna have losing Sherrod Brown was hard because Sherrod Brown got it. He got it from the worker standpoint as well as the person who rides it standpoint. He understood transit, and he brought back a lot of dollars from DC to transit agencies across Ohio. And so losing Sherrod Brown, it's going to hurt. And I do think that there will be some pullback in terms of, you know, transit investment. I think it's going to go back to prioritizing roads. Not to say that roads won't benefit people because they, but paving roads and things like that are going to benefit bus riders as well, transit users as well as, people that ride cars, people that drive cars too. But I definitely do think that there will be some pullback, unfortunately. But I think if you want to get around some of that, you have to build coalitions. You have to, I mean, like, we got to get to know Marino's people. We got to get to know whoever's going to be in the Senate after JD Vance. We're going to have to get to know their people. Yeah, we're going to have a whole new, fresh Senate here, in Ohio. We'll have a whole, so, it's going to be incumbent upon the activists to, you mentioned getting business involved, getting big business involved. We're gonna have to lean on them to explain to these new senators just how important this is. Important it is to business, important it is to the economy and everything. So, which I think is gonna be an uphill battle because, like I said, we're gonna have these new Trump has changed politics. I mean, he really. I think these next 4 years are going to be very interesting. I think that a lot of people are going to try to parrot him, and so I think that it's going to be a lot of no going around. So, um, yeah, I think that answers the question for sure.
So as our audience is listening, Ohio transit activists, shout out to Akshay, who really keeps
Shay,
Ohio Transit Coalition alive, and trying to continue to push on the federal level, and at the state level for the investment in public transit. So I want to end with, the controversy of train versus bus. We do see a lot of advocacy around, a train, a rapid train that can get you from, Cincinnati to Cleveland in an hour or 2 hours or however fast, Governor Casey turned down funding during the Obama administration to see what rail expansion would look like. There's a lot of talks, particularly in the southwest part of Ohio, about connecting Dayton to Kentucky as far as the airport goes. Could you give your perspective on this? Is it train versus bus, or is it, a little bit of both, a transit advocate?
both. I love trains just as much as I love buses. I think that the reason that the Better Bus Coalition, said our mission was going to be about buses is because we did not see the political will at that time in, our transit system, particularly Cincinnati Metro. A lot of the political will was toward our streetcar. And so, that kind of made me hostile to, talking about expanding the streetcar when I'm riding buses that are over 20 years old and they're breaking down. So, that is why I think that we focused our mission strongly on, buses and fixing buses and things like that. But I think you need both. I definitely, think it would be amazing to see some high-speed rail through our state. And I do think that there is some appetite for it. I was just reading an article recently about the city of Hamilton, and they are petitioning Amtrak to put a stop there. I guess they're getting ready to, Amtrak is getting ready to do some expanding through Ohio. And Hamilton, Ohio is petitioning them for a stop. And so I think that, places like that, I mean, come on now, how many, this is why these types of issues are bipartisan. There's not many Democrats up in Hamilton, Ohio. There's just not that many. So exactly, yeah, So this is important to everybody, obviously. And I think that rail would do Ohio great. I would love to kick back, pop open a live laptop, hop on Zoom with you while I'm headed up to Cleveland or Columbus or whatever on the train. So there's room for both. We definitely need to expand both our bus systems and we need some sort of passenger train or something through our state. We definitely need it. And I will never forgive Kasich for cutting that money. That was just ridiculous.
And so, to be competitive for other cities, because a lot of people say Ohio is shrinking and they're going to Charlotte and, they're going to other places, but we also see, a growth in the Midwest. I think that transit is going to play a huge role in whether we're going to be able to compete, and get businesses here, that's going to help the Midwest thrive, given that we see a change in the economy from, old factories and things like that, where now we're trying to bring more manufacturers in, like Intel. And so for us to compete and keep young talent here in Ohio, they want walkable communities. They want to be able to get on public transit. You look at some place like Kansas, who's invested in rail. So when we look at Nashville, and Nashville is it's in Tennessee, which is a very rare state. And so I think that gives the appetite that transit is a bipartisan issue. The days of looking at public transit, that this is for, a quarter class of people, should be out the windows and people's thoughts and minds. But, transit is the essential tool in getting people connected to opportunities, economic opportunities, health outcomes, and lowering emissions. And so lastly, Kim, I just want you to tell our audience where to find you. If you want any transit advocacy help, you want studies done in your city about the benefits of transit, Cam is the man to contact. So please tell our viewers where they can contact you.
I'm Cam Hardy on Facebook and Cam Hardy 513 on Twitter. I spend a lot of time on Twitter. I know a lot of folks are talking about leaving, but I'm not leaving just yet. Just yet. I ain't leaving.
Well, thank you again for watching another episode of the Ohio Voices Informing Energy Choices. Until next time.